A legendary Colombian drug lord and narco-terrorist, Pablo Escobar's name will live on in infamy for all time. Known as the King of Cocaine, he is without doubt the wealthiest criminal in history, amassing a $30 billion, $64 billion by today's standards, fortune by the time of his death. But how did he spend it? Let's find out. This is how Pablo Escobar spent his billions. Number 15. Pet Hippos. What do you do if you have millions of dollars at your disposal and you are the notorious drug lord Pablo Escobar? One asset you probably wouldn't think of is the purchase of a small group of hippos. Escobar bought 4 hippopotamuses and kept them at his illegal zoo in his extravagant Colombian estate. After Escobar's death by bullet, the future of the hippos was left up in the air. Most of the captive animals were taken away by various zoos and conservation organizations after the collapse of the enclosure, but the hippos were left to fend for themselves and have since gone on to multiply. With the government issuing an "if you can catch them, you can keep them" policy, the hippos continue to evade anyone looking to cash in on these giant animals. The hippos have grown tired of their allocated space and have decided to stretch their unsupervised legs. Unfortunately for locals, these new pastures include the country's main river, the Magdalena. With warnings that this mixing of humans and hippos will have deadly results, the government's leaning more and more towards just killing these magnificent animals if they cannot be controlled. If they were to meet their maker through the bullet of a gun, the parallels with the death of their original owner would be almost poetic. Like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Number 14. Hacienda Napoles. One of the biggest purchases anyone will ever make in their lifetime is the purchase of their home. Most of us may only ever need to do it once, and when we do, we go for a relatively modest house. But when you have as much money as Pablo Escobar, you can rest assured that this is gonna be one flashy house. Far from disappointing expectations, the drug lord resided in a 20-kilometer squared main estate known as Hacienda Napoles. 150 kilometers east of Medellin and 249 kilometers northwest of Bogota, this was no regular estate, as it included everything from a Spanish colonial house, a sculpture park, and a complete zoo decked out with the most extravagant of animals. Most of us dream of having more than one bathroom, let alone all of that. And if you thought that was the end of the list, then you are gravely mistaken. A private airport, a bull ring, and even a kart racing track could be found once you enter through the gates of this paradisal land of pleasure and leisure. I mean, this home is Tony Stark levels of kitted out. Even the entrance gate is something to be truly marveled at. Get it? Marveled. As it has one of Escobar's first smuggling planes fixed atop. Talk about hiding in plain sight. Number 13. La Catedral. Pablo Escobar actually went to prison, and rather than being chased into a blocked-off alleyway and being thrown handcuffed into the back of a police car, the King of Cocaine actually handed himself in. Who would have thought it? While this might sound like a bizarre decision to make, the prison he agreed to was far from the most ordinary of jails. This place was unlike any jail you have ever heard of or seen. La Catedral was the place decided upon after negotiations between Escobar and the government concluded, with the custom-built prison being far from somewhere you might see on the news. This place was truly extraordinary. Decked out with a sauna, a pool, a dance hall, a billiards room, and a sports field. To say Escobar lived in luxury during his short stint behind bars would be an understatement. Escobar's jail was 100 times nicer than most people's houses. I'd pay to stay in a place like this. During his stay, Escobar even hosted multiple wedding ceremonies, binged on all kinds of luxurious foods whilst in the arms of beautiful women, and even had the Colombian national football team play a game on his private pitch. Doesn't exactly sound like Guantanamo Bay, does it? We'd argue it barely counts as jail at all. It actually sounds like quite a lavish life. When the government decided that enough was enough, as it became increasingly obvious that the drug lord was still conducting his business efficiently behind bars, they decided to end his comfy stay. We have to admit, that's probably for the best. But while only 13 months into his already soft 5-year sentence, they arrived at the prison to find their inmate had already left. Number 12. Miami House, $15.9 million. Before Pablo Escobar became one of the most hunted men in the United States thanks to an array of drug smuggling charges, he happily spent time in a large and relaxing home in Miami, Florida. Most people in this day and age will sadly never own one home, let alone the abundance that Pablo Escobar has to his name. With the property costing the Colombian $765,500 in 1980, the 7,336 square foot pastel pink mansion had everything from a manicured courtyard, custom lighting, and multi-car garage, as well as a stunning view of the sun setting over the sea. With floor-to-ceiling glass walls, wraparound terraces, expansive lunge decks, outdoor kitchen, an infinity pool, and countless palm trees all decorating the property and making its notorious owner feel as comfortable as possible, it's safe to say that Escobar has a taste for the finer things in life. And to be fair, so would we if we could afford it. I suppose at least he wasn't spending his blood-stained money on ugly luxuries, if we could take any consolation from his splurge. Seized in 1987 by U.S. Marshals, its closure marked the beginning of the end for the Colombian, even if that wouldn't come for another 6 years. But boy oh boy did it come. Number 11. Abandoned Caribbean House. The dark past of Pablo Escobar still lives on in the various homes he bought with the money he earned from all of his drug dealings. If you're gonna have a party home as one of the world's biggest cocaine dealers, then choosing the Caribbean isn't a bad place to settle. This particular archipelago of small islands in the Caribbean was the scene of countless extravagant parties held by the Medellin cartel. The gem on the crown of this party area is probably the secret party home on La Isla Grande, which included a mansion, waterfront apartments, a palm court, enormous swimming pool, and a helicopter landing pad for an easy entrance and swift exit. They certainly weren't lacking space, as the complex had over 300 guest rooms. It wouldn't be attached to Pablo Escobar if it wasn't screaming wealth, and with gold shower heads in all of the bathrooms, you can be sure that box is well and truly checked. I know he was obviously a bad guy, but going to a party here must have been insane. Although I bet some struggled to relax, just in case they got too intoxicated and did something accidentally disrespectful to make them end up in a body bag. Number 10. Norman's Cay Island. Shipping cocaine into the United States is no easy thing to do, even for Escobar's cartel. The focal point of this tricky operation was Pablo Escobar's Norman's Cay Island, which was used as the drug running point for the cartel when reaching out to their American market. That's right, he owns an island. A whole island. Just when you thought his spending could not get more lavish and ridiculous, the man goes and buys an entire island for himself. Maybe the finale of Lost would have made more sense if it turned out that the island they were on was Escobar's. The island wasn't just used for business purposes, however, with the famous drug smuggler Carlos Letter using the location to host countless parties. Letter was also the man in charge of smuggling Escobar's narcotics into the US, with the island's 3,300-foot airstrip, armed guards, vicious attack dogs, and their own personal radar system to keep a lookout for any suspicious aircraft trying to land, all helping to smooth over operations. Couple this paranoia of an imminent arrest with the copious amounts of cocaine snorted, and I'm sure they were more than on edge at times. When off duty, the island provided its occupants with plenty of ways to relax, with its own nightclub, hotel, swimming pool, private dock, and countless gorgeous sandy beaches to choose from. Visiting here in its heyday was certainly a load of fun. Being a criminal almost sounds idyllic if it wasn't for the constant fear of arrest and threat of being killed by friend or foe. Number 9. MK3669X Plane. When you're smuggling in countless kilos of the obviously illegal drug cocaine, having a plane with the most hold capacity is essential to make your extremely risky trips even more worthwhile. In steps the MK3669X Plane, which was a particular favorite of Escobar's cartel. If you roam around Escobar's old stomping grounds, you'll see various of these crafts rotting away and being consumed by Father Time. If you saw one of these flying in from overseas in the 80s, then you were probably witnessing a crime firsthand. The MK3669X wasn't the only plane in Escobar's possession, with the 7th richest man in the world having a whole collection of pricey aircrafts, such as the DC-3, which cost $200,000, as well as several TBM 700s, which amounted to $1.3 million each. Damn, Escobar owned so many planes he could have just gone down the straight and narrow and opened his own airport. Air Escobar, perhaps. Maybe we could take a trip on an Air Escobar plane and then crash land on Escobar Island. Number 8. La Purana Boat and Jet Ski. Pablo Escobar might be known for his grand spending and his love of the finer things in life, which are made available to him due to his infamous criminal activity. However, one of his vehicles isn't exactly the flashy kind we've come to expect, but it played a crucial role. A diminutive private speedboat named La Purana, this pacey little craft was very useful in transferring Escobar from boat to land and vice versa, but its use wasn't just for convenience. The speed of his private boat meant that he could go a lot faster than some of the smaller police boats that would have been deployed to chase down the criminal. The speedboat is still around, collecting mold and dust as it enjoys retirement on Escobar's equally rotting estate, existing as a symbol of a bygone era. While it may be a small and somewhat modest little vehicle, this thing is steeped in a lot of history. Number 7. Car collection. You wouldn't associate Pablo Escobar with low-key vehicles. You would probably rather expect him to be constantly rolling around in one of the most luxurious limousines and vehicles known to man all year round. In rolls the Simcoe 1000, with this small, rear-engined car being a favorite of Escobar's. I guess you can't be driving around looking flashy constantly if you want to avoid bringing some extra police heat on you. The Simcoe 1000 was a hugely popular vehicle in France, with the car being manufactured from 1961 to 1978. 154,282 of these cars were made in 1962 in France alone. With a surprisingly spacious interior, there was even space for a wheel in the front luggage compartment. You know, just in case the original was burst by a stray bullet, perhaps. If he wasn't, Pablo Escobar, this kind of collection would make him the perfect guest on Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. But, he is Pablo Escobar, so... Number 6. Military plane. While there's no doubt that Pablo Escobar loved to flaunt his wealth as well as give back to the community, a lot of his purchases were intelligent buys which contributed to the success of his drug empire. One vehicle which certainly helped smooth over operations and gave his illegal dealings a more secretive edge was his small collection of military aircraft. There's still one of these military aircraft held by the Brazilian government and left on display for interested fans of the Colombian's legacy. Amazingly, the plane has been left in the exact position Escobar landed it all those years ago. Regardless of if this is true, talk about one way to pique the interest of fans even more. Number 5. Edificio Monaco. Escobar lived a life of luxury with countless estates and homes scattered across the land, so it should come as no surprise that he also had a residence in the capital of Colombia, Medellin. The location of the house was no doubt handy for the school run and with the conducting of business, but the luxury home in the center of the city had more than a few pleasant perks within its walls. As well as his wife and son staying in one of the 12 apartments, a move which was made to throw off potential kidnappers, the building had everything from 2 swimming pools, a tennis court, a panic room, vault, and 34 car parking spaces. Seems a little excessive if you ask me, but I doubt anyone's gonna be telling Pablo that. Once called the Monaco building, the home was, of course, the target for Pablo's many enemies. A car bomb even targeted the building in January 1988, right at the beginning of a deadly rivalry between the Medellin and Cali drug cartels. It is now demolished, but when it was around, it was a great tourist hotspot for nosy foreigners who wanted to catch a glimpse of the blood-soaked past. Pablo even met his maker via bullet whilst on one of the rooftops. Sounds eerie. Number 4. Rolex Watch. When you're the head of one of the world's largest and most successful drug cartels, staying on time is a matter of life and death. Keeping in the know of when a shipment is being delivered or when a meeting is meant to take place is crucial to the running of a business. With that being said, there is no rationalization for the purchase of this ridiculously extravagant timepiece, a Rolex wristwatch. The classic yellow gold Rolex Day-Day owned by Escobar is as fancy as you would imagine a watch belonging to a man who ran a drug cartel which brought in over $60 million in profits every single day. With hundreds of miniature diamonds, the one-of-a-kind timepiece certainly makes a statement when flashed about on a wrist. The Rolex costs an estimated $70,000, but was only sold for $8,500. Perhaps its dark and bloodied past doesn't exactly help it at auction. Number 3. Casa Malka Mansion. Being the outlaw that Pablo Escobar is, it should come as no surprise that he had many locations scattered around South America, which were the perfect places to escape from the watchful eye of the American government. Whilst the list of hideouts is numerous, one which certainly stands out is Casa Malka. Found within the Mexican resort of Tulum, Casa Malka looks like the type of place you would expect Tony Montana to live. When Escobar hid out here in the late 80s, the mansion was consumed with nature and was not nearly as much of a tourist hotspot as it is today. With overgrown trees preventing nosy government agents spotting Escobar and his cartel, the location was the perfect hideout. After Escobar's death at the young age of 44 through being shot by Colombian police, Casa Malka fell into disrepair and was left rotting for years. That is, at least until 2012, when the mansion was bought and renovated by world-renowned New York-based art dealer Leo Lamka, who somehow managed to turn the murky Casa Malka into a boutique hotel of beauty. Number 2. $2,500 on rubber bands each month. At the peak of Pablo Escobar's powers, his cartel was making so much money that it was becoming almost a problem. After making around $2.1 billion per year by providing 80% of the world's cocaine, Escobar had a hard time storing his copious amounts of wealth. With the cash being hidden in the walls of cartel members' homes as well as being literally buried in the ground, Escobar had so much money on his hands that he was losing roughly 10% of it through going missing or being damaged and eaten by hungry rats. When you have so much money to manage, keeping things organized and in bundles can be a real issue. Escobar and his cronies were making so much blood-stained money that they were forking out $2,500 a month just on rubber bands. That's incredible. If you ask me, the police should have just followed the rubber band trail. They would have caught Escobar a lot sooner. Number 1. Burnt $2 million cash to keep daughter warm. Being Pablo Escobar's son must have been a wild childhood, to say the least. That is one kid who was certainly not messed with on the playground. While it was certainly extravagant and probably very weird to have your father be so wealthy that he literally offered to pay off the nation of Colombia's national debt in exchange for his pardon, the countless crimes that came with the wealth and notoriety even led Juan Pablo to change his name to Sebastian Marroquin. When sitting down for an interview with Don Juan magazine in 2009, the then 38-year-old described what life was like on the run with the king of cocaine. When living in a hideout in the Medellin mountainside, Pablo's daughter, Manuela, became hypothermic from the cold. Without a moment's hesitation, Don Pablo torched $2 million in crisp banknotes to keep her warm. I'm not sure whether to be endeared by the act of a father protecting his daughter or fascinated by the lack of value one of the wealthiest men in history now gave money. Pablo Escobar certainly liked to live on the wild and lavish side, but if you had his billions of dollars, what would you spend it on? Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time!